Wayne Turner, the burner, Kentucky star, former Kentucky star, our host of our Kentucky show. I'm Jeff Greer, the host of Floyd Street's Finest, and we just watched a pretty ugly basketball game, but nevertheless, we have something to talk about here. Louisville finally wins one of these games. It was the second win in the last, I think, 7 or 8 meetings, dating back to the 2016 win. We talked about how ugly this was off air. But if you're Kentucky, if you're Louisville, what is, I guess, your takeaway from watching this game as a guy who's experienced it? What's your feeling after seeing it?
Well, I felt like, this was a game definitely for Kentucky to win. Um, it was a toss up. I think it was a 4-point favorite. But, I mean, it was a game that had potential to go up and down. If you notice in all the other games that Kentucky has played in this year, teams have tried to control the pace because of their athleticism and the athletes that they have on their team. That's always the case when you play against a Kentucky. You don't want to get up in an up and down game with them because it will definitely bring out the best in them. And in this game, Louisville was very opportunistic and fast breaking. But whenever they had the opportunity to run their offense, they ran it because Kentucky's, such an inexperienced team. And inexperienced teams are going to make mistakes on defense. They're going to turn the ball over on offense. And I think that Louisville definitely got the better out of that by exposing those weaknesses with Kentucky.
So if we thought about the numbers that you would expect from this game, I've got my handy iPad here looking at the numbers on the stat broadcast here. Kentucky 5 of 17 from 3, which is about what you would expect, 29%. They did get on the offensive glass, which we talked about, but they'd only turned 16 offensive boards into 13 second chance points. But Wayne, for me, the biggest key was always going to be, you'll appreciate this as a guard, Carlik Jones, David Johnson versus Davion Mintz, and probably Devin Askew. I wasn't sure who would be. Askew started off really well, kind of faded. Mintz had an excellent game for Kentucky, became their go-to guy, 19 points and 7 boards. But for Louisville, Jones and Johnson combined, I'll give you this, 37 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists, and Jones was their go-to guy, isolation situations, pick and rolls, whatever it was in the final segment of that game. To me, that's where you win the game if you're Louisville, is you have to have those two guys have big games, and they ended up having it, even though Jones got off to a slow start.
Well, like I said, those are guys who are experienced. They've been in that war before. Chris Mack, kudos to him because he's been in that war before. He knows what it takes. He's done his homework, and he looked at it and said, "Okay, well, Askew is an inexperienced player, so we're going to go at him the whole night whenever he is guarding one of our key guys." And as you see, Kalia Jones, he was very aggressive. David Johnson was very aggressive on offense. And they just got to the basket and did whatever they wanted to do the whole day. And, you know, that was pretty much the key. They see that these guys don't guard on the perimeter. If you watch the tape, you watch the previous games, everybody is getting into that lane at will. And if you don't find a solution to that, it's going to be a long season. But definitely a great job to Jones. Great job. He made some big plays at the end. And I thought David Johnson showed some leadership of his team today. And, this is a great win for Louisville. It's a great win for them.
We were talking off air about what this game is like for players and whether they're from the area or not. If you come in to either Louisville or Kentucky, you always hear about fans always joking what the players are, sometimes maybe not joking necessarily. You got to win this game. Whichever school it is, you have to win this game. David Johnson is a kid who's from Louisville. We saw with Quentin Snyder, the Louisville one, the last time. It was a local kid. How much do you think being hearing all of that stuff from the outside gets on these guys? And then certainly with the local guys, what kind of impact you think that might have on them, knowing growing up in this rivalry and that he's going to hear from his cousins and his aunts and uncles and everybody about this game leading up to it.
Well, I mean, for me as a player coming into Kentucky, I had no idea what type of game this was. Um, all the way up until probably my junior year. I mean, I started to understand a little bit as a sophomore, but it's more than a game. I mean, obviously, people could say, "Oh, it's just a game," all you want, but this is more than a game. This is a rivalry game, big time rivalry. We're talking about 70 miles apart, where you're going to see Louisville flags, you're going to see Kentucky flags, you see Kentucky flags in Louisville, you see Louisville flags in Lexington. I mean, it's a serious game, more than the players could ever imagine, especially a new player. And you must win it. It's a must-win game. This is the type of game that could turn your whole season around.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, luckily in 1998, we lost to Louisville in the 1998 game at home. But that game did something to my team and turned it around. So I'm not saying this is the end of the world for Kentucky. Like, don't tank it in, but you definitely have to take this game and dissect it because that was your rivalry that you had a chance to beat, and you lost that game. And you just got to find a way to patch up these wounds that are happening pretty much every night.
What did you think of Kentucky's last couple possessions? They get a look for Sarr, probably like a 16-footer. They got another look from three. Like, what at the very end? Like, did you think that those were good possessions? To me, I'm surprised that you got your best offensive rebounder taking a 17-footer with the game on the line, but I realize that both of these teams have not exactly been playing great, so they're probably just looking for whatever answer they can get at this point in these close situations.
From a coaching mentality, Jeff, I almost feel like you have to go away from the guy that's having a good game. Um, but I was really surprised that Mintz didn't have that ball in his hands at the last seconds of the game, or they didn't run anything for him. I thought Saw got a good look. Unfortunately, Saw was not having the best offensive game tonight. Yeah, it was actually really bad, probably the worst of the last game. Um, so, that's the question. Like, who is that go-to guy? I don't think I go to Saw. I think I forced the issue with Mintz because he was having such a great offensive game, and he looked so much more comfortable in the previous games. And to be quite frank, like I think he's the leader of the team. I think he's the guy to lead Kentucky out of their problems that they're having right now. If those guys, the younger guys I'm talking about, will follow him, because he's an experienced player. He's been around the block. He's played at a good program at Creighton. I mean, he's the guy I feel like you just have to ride at Kentucky.
And they're both. It's the graduate transfers for both teams that ended up being the difference makers. I mean, Mintz was a guy who I thought the lid had been pulled off a little bit. Had the Jalen Withers alley oop field goal off a press break. They get out into the open floor. It's downhill. They throw the lob. At that point, I think they went up 7, and then Mintz comes down and hits a three for Kentucky, and just had a huge game. I want to make sure I get this right. 4 of 6 from three, which is obviously magnificent. And then for Louisville, I mean, Carlik Jones down the stretch, he hits the 2 big free throws to make it a 3-point game at the end. He had a couple of big buckets. The bank in. I don't know if he called bank or not, but the banked in jumper in the final 4 minutes. But they also had 3 turnovers in their last 3 regular possessions. Louisville did, so they left the door open. But it was those graduate transfers for both teams that kind of carried the flag for them in the final minutes. You've been around this game. You've been on both sides of this game. It it seems so cliche, but it seems like the better guys always end up being the guys who are the key factors in these games after all.
Well, absolutely. I mean, every possession matters in every game, but especially in a game like this, every possession matters. And turning the ball over at the end of the game, your coach is definitely not happy. Um, but I just feel like Jones played with so much poise. He and David Johnson seemed connected together. Mintz and Askews are the only players on Kentucky basketball team that I see that are seemingly now to start to have a connection. They
Mhm.
play well together in that first half. And I think, that's what it's all about. Once you get this far in the season and you start learning each other after 5 games, you know what your teammates capable of doing. And even though those guys made those mistakes at the end of the game, they have experience of making those mistakes before. And they
Mhm.
just pick each other up and they say, you know what, we're going to get it back on defense. And that's exactly what they did. And great teams do that. They don't dwell on the mistakes that they make offensively. They dwell on the fact that we have a chance to get it back defensively. And they
Mhm.
go out there and they execute and they make it happen. And that's what they did at the end of the game. If you notice, they made those turnovers, but they got the ball right back.
Mhm.
On a couple of occasions, and that's what saved the game for them.
Yeah, like when you're playing a pack line, and I realize it's not the same pack line that Virginia plays. It's not the same pack line that Wisconsin still kind of uses in its own way. It's a hybrid pack line, but the philosophy is always going to be make it as difficult as possible to get into the lane. You can take as many jump shots as you want, but we're going to make it real difficult for you to get into the lane. And I always felt like that should set up well in this matchup for Louisville because Kentucky is struggling so much as a shooting team. So it is a credit to Kentucky that they ended up 16 offensive boards out of 43 chances, which is a really high percentage rate for them on the offensive glass. It, I want to ask you, having followed Kentucky now um, through this early part of the season, you mentioned Askew and Mintz maybe starting to find a little bit of chemistry together, play a little bit better. Askew had that strong half against North Carolina. Um, how do you put the rest of this thing together? I mean, I realize that's why they pay Cal the big bucks right now, is to figure that out. You do still have league play in front of you. You've got a chance to turn this ship around. What is the solution?
Well, I mean, you need something out of shout out to Dick Vitale. You need something out of your diaper dandies. I'm talking about Terrence Clark and Brandon Boston. Like in games like this, those guys have to show up. And as you saw, both of them were irrelevant. I mean, Brandon Boston tried to get himself involved. Terrence Clark, the ankle, I'm a guard as well. The ankle, I mean, if you're out there on the court, you still have to perform. I mean, there's no excuse for that. You have to perform, and I think those two guys are very critical with this team right now. They're the guys coming in, highly touted recruits, freshmen, predicted to go lottery in the NBA draft. They have to become leaders. You know, I'm not comparing these guys to this guy, but I had the privilege of being in school while John Wall was there. He was a leader. He was leading juniors, leading seniors. And they have to find that personality within themselves. Now, asking someone to find their personality is, a long stretch because everybody's personality is different. But I was a different player on the court. And I know other players are different players than their own personal self off the court than on the court. And you have to become a different player on the court. You have to find a will to win the game. This whole team's riding on those two guys with a little bit of SAR and obviously Askew's coming in along with Mintz, but they have to not get into themselves and they have to be about the team. Like today, Brandon Boston, your offense wasn't great. But now, with your 6'7", 6'8" frame, you got to get on the offensive boards. You got to set good screens. You got to play great defense to be an example as a leader for your team. And I think that is a very critical part of Kentucky's basketball team right now.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. When you look at Louisville coming into this game, they obviously got crushed. They got walloped at Wisconsin, but they come back. They win a shaky game at Pittsburgh. They did not play well, but they were able to get a little distance in the second half and win that game. And then today, I mean, I think by all accounts, you would say they did not play well. Their two key guys have to have good games for them to win, and they did. But there are a couple other guys like Sam Williamson. He had the big layup towards the end there, but he did not play well today, which is he's been consistent for Louisville this season and wasn't there for him today. And they need guys like that. And Dre Davis, the freshman from Indianapolis, had a nice aggressive game, but he still, I think, was 2 for 9, some shot selection issues. But I think if I'm Louisville, you got to feel pretty good that you're through this first part of the season. You're 6-1. You throw out the Wisconsin loss, but you win a couple of games where you weren't exactly off at the races. They almost blew the season all game, but they still won it. And now you can really fully focus on just plugging in those last couple of pieces to really get this thing going. I think it's all to play for Louisville in the league. I'm not saying they're going to win the ACC. I don't think they will, but I do think they've got the pieces there and the potential to be a top four finisher in that league. Do you get that vibe from watching them?
Absolutely. I think Chris Max is a great coach. I definitely think he's preparing his team to the fullest. Being at his COVID-19 season. But yeah, I mean, those guys are missing leadership as well.
Mm-hmm.
You got a guy like Malik Williams who's been out for a long while, who's been there, been in these games, and is very vocal. He's a very vocal guy,
Mm-hmm.
and you miss guys like that, and I think that's why Williamson has been, well, when he has bad games, he misses a Malik Williams, someone who is showing him the ropes, someone who's making him feel comfortable by telling him it's okay to make a mistake. You can
Mm-hmm.
come back and make it up on the defensive end. And I think when you have one of your players communicating, telling you what's right, what's wrong, what you need to do to get better as a player, what coach likes, what he don't like, that's so important for your team to have those seniority players explaining to your younger players what you need to do to be successful in the program. And that right there for Louisville, if when he comes back, I solely believe that they will be a good team in the ACC. They will definitely compete in that ACC, and you know, and that's the thing about Louisville. They're when they get in the ACC play, they're used to tough competition.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing a Kentucky tonight, that's like a normal night for them in the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
So they're well prepared. They're ready for the battle. I think they'll be okay this year in the ACC when they get Malik Williams back and they play with the mentality that they had tonight, even though they didn't play as sharp as they normally do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I also the other kid who coming back, Charles Minland, I think is going to be a really nice addition for them as well, the graduate transfer. As we've been talking about, having those older guys on the floor, playing the huddle, say important stuff, reminders, whatever it is, that can kind of get you calmed down in situations. Having two of those guys out and coming back, Minland obviously a lot sooner than it appears Malik Williams is a huge thing for Louisville. What did you think of the environment today, man? It felt like I was watching like a JV game before the high school game with like 1,000 people, and it was just parents basically in the crowd.
Well, it's definitely different. Me being me playing semi-pro, I could definitely feel feel the vibes a little bit. But hey, you got to say I'm at the park sometimes, or I'm at a recreation center, and there's some woos and some R's in there as well. But the woos and the R's doesn't make it doesn't make the results go your way. At the end of the day, in practice, it's the same thing. There's no crowd. We're still out there competing, and honestly, Jeff, like out there as a player, you're not thinking about the crowd. The only time you're thinking about a crowd is someone makes a spectacular play.
Hmm.
So the crowd's really no excuse because it's silent at times in the
Hmm.
crowd when you're playing a game. So the crowd's no excuse. I mean, it definitely helps when you're at home. You know, the motivation of the crowd, the excitement, the adrenaline that gives goes through your body because there's so much people in an arena. But you know, I just feel like that's really tough on the players, and I feel for them in that situation because they're not getting the full college experience, especially the freshmen
Hmm.
at Kentucky.
Yeah. Well, I'll leave you with this. So I've been here now 7 years, and I will never forget the first thing that I noticed with the Kentucky Louisville game, and it has stuck with me for every game since. I was not in the arena today, obviously. Um, the nervous tension. It doesn't matter if it's at the Young Center or at Rupp Arena. The nervous tension, like 50, it starts really amping up about a half hour before the game. And man, there's like the national anthem and the starting lineups. Like it feels like your finger is getting pulled in a heavy duty rope. Like it is serious, serious tension going in those arenas. So maybe that helped both teams today, although the shooting numbers don't match that, but maybe that helped them just kind of get juiced for the rivalry in a different way, not having that awkward nervousness of everyone being afraid to go holiday after this and have to talk to their neighbors about this game.
Right, and the small arenas definitely have the advantage right now because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it could be I think it could go unnoticed. Those big arenas you definitely feel the vibes. You feel there's nobody in there. So that's definitely tough. And but like I was telling one of my ex teammates, it's bittersweet right now. Because you don't have fans that are able to boo you as much as you would if it was 24,000. At
Mm-hmm.
Rupp Arena or 24,000. Being at in the Yum Center. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
don't have those fans that are actually being negative. And you just got to take the good with the positive and just move on from there and understand that we're going through some situations right now that we can't control, and right now is find your own motivation. Coaches as well. I mean, we can't eliminate the coaches. Coaches as well. Everybody right now in college basketball has to find, especially the bigger arenas, have to find that motivation and the adrenaline to perform at a high level.
Absolutely. Well, he is Santa Wayne Turner. I like the hat, man. That's big time. You have yourself a great weekend. He's Wayne Turner. You follow him on Twitter at the Burner.
Turn the
Make sure
show.
turn the show. I love it. And you got to make sure to subscribe and rate and review his podcast. Jeff Greer, host of the Floyd Street's Finest podcast, rate and review that as well. Wayne, any parting wisdom that you can share with Kentucky and Louisville fans before we get going for the holiday weekend?
All I would say was stick with your team. Understand they're going through some tough times right now. This is not normal for basketball. This is not normal, definitely for college basketball. I think these young guys coming in, they had different expectations. They didn't know a pandemic was going to happen. They expected something different on their visit. They saw something different. Just understand what they're going through right now, and it's a whole mental, challenge for all of those players and coaches and families, and just support them the best way you can. Don't just look at the wins and losses. Look at the person and how hard they're trying. And that's all I got to say.
That's very wise, especially with social media the way it is these days. That's great advice, and that's all people can look at right now. They can't go out to the store and get interact with people there and stuff like that. So that's great advice. Well, Wayne, thank you so much, man. I love the hat. I love chatting with you as always. We were joking before. It's been a little while, but it's good to see you, and thanks so much for coming on here and talking about this game.
Always good to see you, Jeff. Appreciate you. Happy holidays to you and your family.
All right, thanks, man. See you everybody later.